Okay, year 9. Before we start and I explain our first task, make sure you have your pen, paper ready. It is 4th of February 2021. Our title is Mastery Review, and your job is to connect the correct poetry term with evidence from the poem. So looking at our poetry terms, we have dramatic monologue, colloquial expression, half rhyme, enjambment, and line length. Which evidence best matches those terms? Verge curb, I dropped it into third and leant across, or round the next bend. Stitch that, I remember thinking, you can walk from there, or under the weather. So which of those would you say is the best illustration of a dramatic monologue moment? Which of those is the best illustration of colloquial expression? Which of those is the best illustration of half rhyme? Which of those represents enjambment? And which of those represents line length? So press pause and you write out the term and its correct definition, and we'll see what the answers are together. Okay, so let's have a little look and give yourself a tick if you are right and listen to the explanation in case you're wrong. So remember, a dramatic monologue ties in with the idea that this is a narrative poem, and dramatic monologue is the speaker, the voice of a character talking to us. It tells us their story. And I know we've got other examples of the first person, but the one in pink is, you'll see, illustrates something else. But absolutely, when he says, stitch that, I remember thinking, you can walk from there. There's that first person I remember thinking that somebody is talking to the audience. Lovely. Colloquial expression. Now, colloquial expression, if you remember, is the everyday language of speech. It's the everyday language and phrases that we might use. We could argue it's quite cliched. It's the sort of cliched expressions. Now, in itself, those cliches might suggest, that kind of superficial. If somebody says to you, how are you doing? And we all smile, go fine. And we use these kind of like everyday expressions that are a bit superficial. We're responding, but we're really keeping people at a distance. And in this poem, those colloquial expressions kind of suggest somebody that is kind of like superficially one way. So we have the under the weather. Now, actually also stitch that as a colloquial expression in the dramatic monologue example. So we've got the colloquial expression under the weather. Half rhyme. Okay, verge and curb. So in this poem, we do have half rhyme, kind of creating that sense of rhythm, but also you could argue the idea that nothing quite fits as it should for this character. Okay, there is an imbalance, a sense of discord in his life. Everything is slightly off key. And that half rhyme help creates those moments of disjoint and those moments of, if you like, a lack of harmony that suggests that this is a character in this dramatic monologue whose life is out of kilter, out of balance. Now, enjambment, the French word, where you take one idea and continue it into the next stanza. So it creates a sense of momentum, a sense of continuation, that something has a knock-on effect, a cause and effect moment. So I dropped it into third, and then we see a stanza break and it comes into the next stanza and lent across. So the idea that the actions have consequences and are linked. So as he drops the car into third, he then leans across to release the man. Okay, now line length, really we could have picked any example of line length, but we just went for round the next bend. Okay, and it just reminds us that line length is, we have longer lines which create a sense of pace and a sense of action, shorter lines, that bluntness of an idea, that bluntness of a moment. So give yourself a tick. If you've got any wrong, just based on what I've said, do you understand why? Okay, so give yourself a tick, and if we like it, a mark out of 5. Okay, so we are continuing on our journey into the importance of theme. And in particular, now that we've looked at 2 texts, we're beginning to think of the ability to identify the same theme about work in this new text. So we're going to be, we've been using this as our poem. Okay, so I'm just going to read it to you once more to refresh. Now, I do appreciate it's a bit tricky if we don't have access to printers and things. Now, I was really pleased to see with one student's work that they've managed to print the poem off, and they have been working onto the poem. So that could be a really nice way of organizing yourself and being able to respond to some of these tasks. But I also appreciate that we don't all have access to that kind of, to be able to print them. So I am trying to create tasks that enable us to still access and understand meaning without being able to get our hands on these poems. But The Hitcher by Simon Armitage. I'd been tired, under the weather, but The answer phone. The answer phone kept screaming. One more sick note, mister, and you are finished. Fired. I thumbed a lift to where the car was parked. A Vauxhall Astra, it was hired. I picked him up in Leeds. He was following the sun to west from east with just a toothbrush and the good earth for his bed. The truth, he said, was blown in the wind or round the next bend. I let him have it on the top road out of Harrogate, once with the head, 6 times with a crook lock in the face. Didn't even swerve. I dropped it into third and leant across to let him out and saw him in the mirror bouncing off the curb, disappearing down the verge. We were the same age, give or take a week. He said he liked the breeze to run its fingers through his hair. It was 12 noon. The outlook for the day was moderate to fair. Stitch that, I remember thinking. You can walk from there. I do like this poem. It's quite dark. Okay, so what we're going to do today, though, is we're going to move towards greater, independence. So we're going to do some thinking out loud on paper together, but then you are going to do some writing without me, okay? So when we're thinking out loud on paper, we're going to zoom in on stanza 1, okay? We're going to use stanza 1 to front the writing today, to do some writing that's a bit more independent so we can start to gauge as your teachers where you're at and how it's going. So we know our stanza 1. I'd been tired, under the weather, but the answer phone kept screaming. One more sick note, mister, and you're finished, fired. I thumbed a lift to where the car was parked, a Vauxhall Astra, it was hired. Now, you're going to see some questions come up. Now, the reason it says thinking out loud on paper is I do not want you at this stage to write your answers as complete sentences. This is about thinking out loud on paper. So in other words, note-taking, using notes to get some thoughts. But I'm not going to give answers as such. I want you to have your response, okay? This is about becoming more independent. So question 1, how is the speaker feeling? So what words would you make a note of? How is he feeling? Now, guys, there's the obvious. He's feeling tired. He's feeling under the weather. But begin to use inference. Begin to use your own language, your own vocab to write down how he's feeling, okay? And I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. Okay, I'll do a magic countdown. If only I had a third hand, I'd like to give you 10 seconds to answer that question in note form. So how is the speaker feeling? Okay, so how did you think he was feeling? Okay, now this time, I've said circle or zoom in on. So let's look at this word, which word but, okay? But. Now, buts are small yet powerful things, okay? Whenever we see a but, we know there's going to be a change in direction. There's going to be a change moment. So the word but also always works like a turning point, a hinge moment. I like you, but, and we kind of know what's happening. We often anticipate that what follows the but is often negative. Not always, but more often than not, it is negative. I like you, but. I think we should see other people. I like you, but. Oh, your work was great, but. And we've kind of been trained to expect after the but a negative. So let's see what comes after this but. So I want you to zoom in on the but moment, and I want you just to make a note of what's happening after the but. Okay, what's happening after the but that really is stopping the speaker from being able to give in to their feelings and their need for rest. Okay, so I've been tired, under the weather, but. So what's happening that stops the speaker from being able to rest? So again, 10 seconds on the clock. What's happening after the but to make him feel like he can't rest? Ten seconds. Okay. So it's using in that but moment, isn't it? This really powerful verb choice, screaming. But the answer phone kept screaming. Now, answer phone there is like, it's actually a brand. We literally have phones now and voice messaging and things like that. But in the oldie days, in the oldie times, you can have telephones in your home with answer machine messages, and there's little tape players. So an answer phone is a brand of that kind of device. So the idea that people were leaving him messages. But people aren't just leaving him messages, are they? What does the verb screaming help you to imagine about this answer phone? Now, that's a lovely as well. It's personification, isn't it? Because an answer phone, an inanimate object, cannot scream. But he feels like, or he interprets whatever's happening with his answer phone to feel like being screamed at. So what does that help you to imagine? So your 10 seconds, what does the verb screaming help you to imagine? Now remember, you are thinking out loud on paper. You're writing your notes down. So you should be writing something. So if something's screaming at you, what does that suggest? With any of this, you can always double it up, right? Google the word screaming. What does it mean to scream? And use that to help you. But you should have some notes down now. What does the verb screaming help you to imagine? Okay, now, what is this? So still linked around this moment. What is the speaker threatened with? Okay, so what's the threat? What's he being threatened with? Does this make you think that he has to work or wants to work? Okay, so what's the speaker being threatened with? Does this make you think that he has to work or wants to work? And a little clue, when we looked at alliteration yesterday, it took us to this answer. So in 10, what's the speaker threatened with? Does this make you think that he has to work or that he wants to work? Boom. Okay. Now, last but not least. Now, with this one, how do you think the speaker feels then as they go to work? So at this moment that he thumbs the lift to where the car was parked, so this idea that he's left his house, he's hitchhiked to where a car was parked, he hires a Vauxhall Astra. How's he feeling at that point? Okay, how do you think the speaker feels as they go to work? Now, there are some words here. Some of them might be relevant. Some of them are what we would call red herring words, the wrong word. Some of them might guide you to think about your own word. So how do you think this guy feels? Trapped? Frustrated? Angry? Powerless? Poorly? Stressed? Pressurized? Disconnected? Which words do you think best, for you, best represents how this guy's feeling? Now, don't use all of them. Maybe say, if you're going to pick from that word bank, 2, or challenge yourself to come up with your own. But at the end of this 10 seconds, you should have a note made as to how do you think the speaker feels as they go to work, okay? Boom. So really what we've done is we've zoomed in on stanza 1 and we've been thinking out loud. Really, those questions are designed to guide our thoughts, our own opinions. The note taking, you're going to use that for the next activity. Now, we're going to do a front the writing activity. Now, this means you go first. You're going to do this without me. You're going to write for 4 minutes. Now, I'm not going to lie, you're not going to write random things for 4 minutes. I'm going to give you a question. Then we're going to put the timer on, okay? And then after 4 minutes, that will be your chance, okay, to have responded to a question. Now, the question I want you to answer, what does this stanza that we've just looked at, that we've just thought about, that we've made notes on, what does this standard teach us about the impact or the effect of work and why work is a problem for people? Now, the only clue I'm going to give you is that you can use these sentence stems to get you going. But I want you to try and just write for 4 minutes to answer that question. Thinking about some of the ideas from the other page. So you've got in front of you, hopefully, the notes that you've just made. Now you're going to have 4 minutes to write your answer. Now, if I really put 4 minutes on the clock, I would be sat here for 4 minutes, you know, like a statue, trying to look mindful and reflective whilst you write for 4 minutes. Or I could fake it. I could say write for 4 minutes starting now, and then just press record again in 4 minutes. Okay, so you've got 4 minutes. Put your timer on. Starting now. 4 minutes. Now, if you think, I didn't write anything, miss, because you're about to show us the answer. No, I'm not. Okay, that's where you've got ahead of yourself. So you should have written something in those 4 minutes, using, if you want, those sentence stems. Now, the next stage, we are working towards what we call autonomy. Okay, you're going first this lesson. You're in control. So you do need to check your writing, though. Now, this is where we see with certain types of writing, it can be good to have an assessment criteria in advance. Sometimes you front your writing, you just get initial ideas down, and then you can introduce the checklist to see what you're naturally doing and then what you need to intentionally do. So that's what we're going to do. So you should have a piece of writing in front of you. Now, we're going to go for a point scheme so you can self-mark. Okay, and I'm going to take you through each stage. So, number 1. Count the number of words written. If you have written more than 50 words in 4 minutes, give yourself a point. Now, I'm going to reveal each one. You can either pause and do it as we go, or you can see the form, but you're going to end up with a point scheme for your piece of writing. Number 2, if you've used any quotes or evidence from stanza 1 as proof of your opinion, award another point. So actually, you might have said, oh, I think the problem with work is it makes this guy really stressed, which is a relevant point. But if you said, I think this guy's really stressed, that he's, that the answer phone keeps screaming at him, there you go, you've used evidence. If you said, I think this guy feels poorly, but you said, I think the guy is poorly, he's under the weather, and you've used evidence, some people will be doing that, so give yourself a point. Oh, if you've used because or which. Now, if you were using my sentence stems, you can already automatically get a free point for this one because the wonderful thing she does, because was already in that sentence stem. So if you're following those sentence stems for those 4 minutes, you've definitely got at least 1 point because was in there. Okay? And finally, now it says if you have 2 of the purple words, award 1 point. What purple words? These purple words. Okay, so this kind of represents quite a big bank of vocabulary we've been introducing. Now, I didn't ask you to even think about these words deliberately. I want to see what your brain, your own lovely, beautiful brain is doing when you begin to write with a bit more independence. Now, so see, these are words we've looked at recently over the course of the unit: didactic, resolution, problem. So if you've said, again, following the marks, the sentence stems, I think problem and conflict were in there. Contentious, impending, bombarded, prevalent, narrative, poem, stanza, monologue, first person voice, persona, colloquial expression, end stop, enjambment, half rhyme, alliteration, metaphor, juxtaposition, paradox, yada, 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 yada. We don't give you this vocabulary because we simply want you to do stuff. We give you this vocabulary because we want you to do stuff that becomes a natural way of working and writing into the end of year 9, ready for year 10. So it would be amiss of me, though, to say that's it. You've gone first, you're in control of your marking, but now you are also going to do something that's about responsibility. Oh, miss, why are you using such a horrible word? Because it's good for us. Okay, so give yourself a mark out of 4. Now, don't worry about trying to write all of the purple down. I'm going to ask you to do our last task for today. Okay, so you are now in control and you are now responsible. You are going to be responsible for revising your paragraph so that it gets 4 out of 4. So you are going to revise your response so that it has more than 50 words. If it already had more than 50 words, then you don't need to focus on that area. Now, why word count? Now, the truth is, we know you can be really intelligent and really concise, and actually word count for you won't always be a target. But sometimes we just don't say enough. We're superficial. We stay at a surface level. We answer a minimal question in a minimal way. And I have to be honest with you, there is a real balance that we need to achieve ready for like year 10 and 11, where it's not about writing loads, but actually losing control. And it's not about writing not enough so that we are always superficial. They do talk about, for the balance in terms of how much we write, a sustained, controlled response. In other words, I'm writing enough that's answering the question. I'm writing enough and it's controlled. I'm not rambling and waffling like I am now. So you are going to end this lesson with spending the time needed. It says there roughly 4 minutes. Depends, but it should take you up to the 45 minutes so that your paragraph has definitely 50 plus words. If you're over 50, then that's not a problem, okay? You need to choose and use quotes from that first stanza, so only stanza 1, as evidence. So if you found when you marked it, you hadn't used quotes, when you revise the writing this time, I want you to put the quotes in, okay? I want you to choose and use 2 purple words to help you write with precision and detail. So in a minute, you might need to just go back 1 slide. I can't remember if I put the words on this slide. We'll have a look. I might add them on, do a bit of tech wizardry in a minute. But I want you to deliberately, intentionally choose to use 2 purple words. Now, this is actually easier. Can be about, that's why we've looked at positives, yeah? So the hitcher, comma, a narrative poem, comma, and then we've embedded a purple word or phrase. Okay, in the first stanza, second phrase. So we've got 2 purple words already used that we're revising our writing with. But actually, those words are about writing with precision and detail. It shows an examiner, a marker, a teacher that you understand, A, that you're looking at a poem and the demands of that form and how it is structured, but also it's like precision. I always think, why use technical vocab? It's a bit like being the difference between Dr. Drake Ramore from Simpsons and Dr. Hibbert. Dr. Hibbert is clearly a well-trained professional medic, even though he does the funny laugh. Dr. Drake Ramore, hello everybody, clearly a quack. Yep, ill-trained, ill-informed. Unless you're Homer Simpson, this doctor is not one you would go to. It's the same when we write. Using technical vocab isn't enough, but it does create a good impression. It creates an impression of knowledge and expertise. Okay? And I want you, if you haven't, or to use again a because or which within your response. So we are not simply adding to what we've written before. If you're just adding more to what you've written before, you've missed the process. I want you to look at what you've written before, having used the way we've just marked it, to identify what you're going to make best. And I'm deliberately not showing you any of my writing. I want to see what you do. The only get out clause, okay, if you're like at this stage, what can I do, miss? Okay, is you are going to magically, well, not magically, I'm going to show you. You can either go back to this slide for the purple words. Hello, so you might choose 2 of those before you even begin writing. I'm going to use problem. I'm going to use first person voice. I'm going to use alliteration. Okay, you can use more than 2, by the way, but you can intentionally now use the vocab. Or if you want, see even more, you can, if you're really stuck, go back to this page and turn your answers to these questions into a paragraph. Because actually this thinking point was about getting you ready with the ideas to answer the question. Okay, so your job now to the end of the lesson is to have a really well-structured revised paragraph that you're going to email and send to your teacher. You've got this first paragraph, which was your draft. This is not what you send to your teacher. No. If you send this to your teacher, you've missed the point. Okay, this is not what you send to your teacher your first go. You demonstrate control. So you look at what you've written and you're in control of what you've written. You see where it's done well. You see where you need to improve it using this mark scheme. What you send to your teacher, what you send to me, to your lovely teachers, is the revised writing. The bit where you've shown responsibility, where you've got a paragraph that answers this question. What does this opening stanza teach us about the impact and effect of work and why it's a problem for people that hits this criteria? Okay, so don't overthink it in the terms of getting stressed. You can always go back and use some of those ideas from earlier. And it's still only a paragraph. So we are actually talking about 50 plus words. We are talking about 5 sentences, but well crafted. Sentences that use intentional vocabulary, sentences that use evidence. Okay, thank you.